Whereas a high-level answer would have included several benefits and limitations. A good attempt at discussing these was expressed clearly and fluently. Examples are given and the points made are substantiated by these examples. All the examples needed to be in the context of the case study, and the candidate needed to provide example of the data that would need to be encrypted and why. Okay, so you're losing marks here, not giving examples and not really explaining your answers as part of your discussion. Okay, and it clearly tells us here one of the requirements of this high-level answer is a discussion. One of the requirements of a discussion is that you reach a conclusion. So you need to be thinking about coming up with your benefits and your limitations and coming up with examples to substantiate that and coming up with a reasonable conclusion. And again, all technical terms are used correctly and ideally no obvious spelling, punctuation issues, especially for those key terms, okay? So if we scroll down, we can see here another question. Identify and describe two characteristics of an intranet. Intranet questions come up pretty regularly, okay? The differences between intranets and internets and extranets. So, you know, you need to kind of be aware of these. So identify and describe two characteristics. So the first thing is you need to understand the difference between you know, the different types of www technology, and you need to understand the characteristics of them and then relate it to the case study. Why is it suitable for staff to access course details? Okay, and this person's been given a mark for explaining it's suitable for part-time members because they can view their details, other staff members' details, course details. Okay, it's related to the case study. Number two, it's a private closed access system. That's a characteristic of this intranet system that we're talking about here. Okay, so only authorized people within the organization can see the stuff. There are levels of security put in place to prevent anyone else not being able to see the stuff. Okay, so some explanation of that. So what's the examiner said? Well, answer one provides an answer relating to you know, various things like speed. It relates to the staff. Okay, it identifies the characteristic, talks about security. It's not you know, it's not a terrible answer, but it's a little bit confused in a couple of places here. So the candidates provided a description that relates to unauthorized people, but basically then goes on to make the same point again to substantiate a further point, but because it's just a duplication, well, then that doesn't get you any more marks. So the takeaway from this is you can't say the same thing as an example twice and expect to pick up extra marks because you've already said it. Okay, examiners don't spend ages reading stuff they've already read. They just skip it and move on to the next thing. Okay, so how could they have picked up the extra marks? By explicitly stating two characteristics of an intranet and then describing them and then relating them to the case study. Okay, rather than saying the same thing twice. Okay. So this question relates to quality of information, and again this question comes up quite regularly. Discuss how the importance of collecting good quality information should be considered when creating a market research survey. So we need to understand market research, we need to understand what kind of things might be on a survey, we need to understand this idea that if the information isn't good quality, well, what does that mean? And if it is good quality, well, what does that mean? Okay. And this candidate has written that it's important for the business to collect good quality information. The reason being, because then by collecting good quality, it will help them produce good graphs and tables. And the benefit from this is that it will make I think that's meant to say prediction, and results more effectively as the information will be relevant. The benefit for the business is that the result will be more accurate. Okay. The moderator tells us here that there's no real reference to the case study, doesn't really answer the question. The focus is on creating good graphs and tables without really understanding or explaining what good graphs and tables look like or what might be included in these graphs and tables. They do identify that the information needs to be accurate and relevant, but it's brief. It's a low-level answer to the question because it doesn't really show any understanding, and the answer is a little bit confused. Okay, so let's have a look at the last couple. The UK-based communications company recently had a breach in security. Again, these questions come up all the time. Describe 2 impacts this breach may have had on the customers. Okay, so there's the clue. What are the impacts on the customers? So it mentions things like identity fraud, loss of finances, you might have to reset your passwords, you might have to spend time contacting people, sorting stuff out, cancelling your credit cards, and so on and so on. It's a 4-mark question. Here's the issue. Many candidates just failed to read this question properly. The focus was on the impact of the security breach on the customers, and many candidates provided responses that just related to customers losing trust in the company, which is an impact on the company, not an impact on the customer. Okay, so be careful that you understand the question. And part B of this question says, explain how the Computer Misuse Act has been broken during this security breach. So this is you explaining your understanding of the Computer Misuse Act and what the Computer Misuse Act covers. And again, illegal to gain unauthorized access to computer material, unauthorized access to the internet, unauthorized alterations could have been made to an account. Okay, so the Computer Misuse Act is to do with misuse of computers. And clearly we can see here the examiner is concerned that there is a gap in people's knowledge. They don't really understand what the Computer Misuse Act is or what it covers. And so many of the responses were kind of general. It was a little bit of guesswork. It talked about hacking, didn't really give a level of detail that was good enough to be, getting all 6 marks to this question. Okay, so what you needed to be doing was explaining what's in the Computer Misuse Act and how this had been broken during this security breach. And then following on from the breach, the company's now reviewed its policies, it's updated its procedures. Why would a company have a policy for training staff? Well, we looked at this question before, okay? We know the answers. Did students do well in their exam for 3 marks? Well, some did, but some were generic. Some, again, failed to demonstrate understanding of what policies and procedures are. And there wasn't really any explanation of what the policy is and why staff need to understand what that policy is and how that helps them so that they don't then break the law, okay? And then finally, identify the procedure for disposing of paper-based records. Well, shredding it, burning it, anything along those lines, okay? The moderator basically makes one point here. And that is a worrying number of candidates felt that recycling paper-based records would be acceptable. Well, not really, because, what's the possibility of people's information, getting out there? What kind of recycling are we talking about? In what way is it being recycled? Okay, it's kind of common practice to destroy these things in a way that they, can't be accessed by anyone. So if you had perhaps said recycling, and in that process of recycling, the documents are destroyed, then you might have got away with that. But realistically, destroying includes, things that make that document no longer accessible or readable. It's the same with hard drives. Okay, most of the time, data can be recovered from hard drives. Most companies will just take a hammer and just smash it. So it's just broken and can't be ever reused, and data can never be pulled off it. So I hope that's been a kind of helpful run through of some of the questions and some of the things that the moderator had said, and hopefully it will get your mind thinking in terms of, are there any gaps in your knowledge and what do you need to do about that?